Welcome to the Workspace of Tomorrow podcast, brought to you by Room, the New York City startup rethinking the modern workspace, in partnership with The Slowdown. I'm your host, Spencer Bailey. Here, I speak with creative leaders who have had a front row seat to observe the transformational shifts in how we're all working today, and have deep insight into where things are headed. This week on the podcast, we've got Mauro Porcini, the Italian-born Chief Design Officer of PepsiCo. The first person to ever hold the role at the company, he's been in the position since 2012. Prior to this, he was Chief Design Officer of 3M. On the episode, we spoke about design thinking, which Mauro defines specifically and without any ambiguity, focusing on three pillars: empathy, strategy, and prototyping. For those listeners out there skeptical of design thinking, like I am, he makes a convincing case for it, and on his own terms. Mauro also talks about how to proactively shift company culture, something he has broken down into a 5-phase process. First is what he refers to as denial. Then there's hidden rejection. Next, the occasional leap of faith, followed by the quest for confidence, and finally, holistic awareness. If this sounds heady, that's because it is. But he explains it clearly. In truth, it's an approach we can all apply to many facets of our lives. Let's jump into it. Here's my conversation with Mauro Porcini. Today on the podcast, we've got Mauro Porcini from PepsiCo. Welcome, Mauro.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I wanted to start today's conversation on the subject of design thinking. You're somebody who actually has brought it to bear in a real, tangible way. And I think the phrase design thinking has become muddled, let's say. What is design thinking to you?
Well, design thinking is a word or two words that have been used and abused by our community and the business community in general. There are usually, I talk about three specific pillars that are really relevant when you think about design thinking: empathy, strategy, and prototyping. Empathy is all about understanding people, their needs and their wants. Once you have these insights, then you need to understand what is relevant for your business. It could be a new business, it could be your established company. So how do you strategize around that insight? In three dimensions: business model, culture, and processes, capabilities of your organization. So these dimensions are extremely important, but when designers talk about this, often, I get the pushback from the business community, and they're like, well, wait a second, empathy, we understand empathy, consumer insights, consumer research is part of marketing in these organizations. We don't need designers. And strategy, of course, marketing, business, own strategy. Why do we need designers? And designers will tell you, well, but we look at people in a different way. We look at business in a different way. And, you will start this conversation where at the end of the day, designers will always lose because we don't have the credibility and we don't have the resources to drive that kind of, that decision. But then there is this third element that is the ability to prototype. So you understand that there is an opportunity in the world. You understand that the opportunity makes sense for the company, and you start to create. You make a mock-up, a sketch. You create something that has the amazing power to align people, to enable different kind of communities to co-create with you, to build confidence inside the organization that what you're doing is the right thing to do. Essentially, prototyping is a way of thinking and drives efficiency, increase quality, and build confidence in the company that is so important when you need to take a risk on something that is innovative and new to the world.
Right. Why do you think design thinking has got a bad rap? I mean, on both sides of the equation, you mentioned that business people are like, I don't get it. But designers too, there are a lot of designers who are like, oh, I can't stand design thinking.
Yeah. Well, there is a very clear reason. If you position design thinking as just a process, and you sell this to companies and you tell them, well, this is a magic wand. You use this process, you're going to solve all your problems. Then most of the time you will fail. Design thinking is, before anything else, about the people thinking. I use often this analogy or metaphor when I try to explain, the value of people and the value of the thinkers behind the processes. And the analogy is, imagine you are in a room and your room is your framework. And this, a beautiful room is the perfect room to have that meeting. And you have people in this room, and you have a facilitator that is your tool. So companies always talk about frameworks and tools and how to put people in the room, and they often forget that the quality of the ideas that is going to be generated is all about the quality of thinking of those people, and therefore the quality of those people. And so many times in companies you talk about, once again, the processes, the design of the organization, and you give for granted that you're going to have great people. And the reality is that often you don't have the right people for the specific task. To be innovators, to be design thinkers, you need specific kind of characteristics, and that's key. And so we should focus everything, 90% of the conversation on who are those people, what are those characteristics, how to find them in a company, eventually how to retain them inside the organization, and how to empower them to do what they're supposed to do.
You joined Pepsi in 2012, and when you came on board, you created this space in New York, the PepsiCo Design and Innovation Center. Talk to me about that. What was your process in terms of creating this space, this physical space here in the city, and how did you imagine it to be sort of a reflection of what you were doing at the company?
When I joined the company, it was not planned to build a design center in the city. And somehow I built a case for our CEO back then in Ranui that we actually needed a location in the city, mostly because I always believed that the design space and innovation space should be co-located with the headquarters, with the business people, with the rest of the organization. Eventually, you ring-fence it, you protect it, you want to protect the space and the culture, but within the broader organization. The problem in the case of PepsiCo is that the broader organization was based in Purchase, 1 hour driving from New York City. So it was very difficult to move designers from New York City. I mean, it's a unique case. So in a way or the other, we were able to make this case for a space in Manhattan. And before getting the space, I was just starting, and I didn't want to ask too much to the company, money and resources and investment. So we got a temporary space in the city. There was literally, we used to call it a dungeon, or somebody ironically called it the palace, but really ironically. It was like a tiny space with water that was dropping from the ceiling, and even we even found a mouse, a rat, in the building. I always talk about this because that space helped so much the team at the very beginning, the core team of 5-6 people, then we grow to 10, 15, to bond. There was that feeling of being pioneer, it was exactly like a startup. Today, you see online the images of a Steve Jobs in his garage, or Jeff Bezos, for instance, with Amazon written by hand on the wall. We had that kind of feeling. We were building something from scratch.
Despite being in this massive multinational corporation.
We feel like we are a startup within the company. We are a startup in many ways because we're building somehow a new culture inside the company, the organization. We are the new function. Even after 8 years, we're a new capability. We are trying to find our way, within the company, integrating ourselves with the rest of the company. We are outside of the company, where we are part of the company as well. There is always that kind of tension. And so I'm telling this story because even the first space was really a reflection of our mindset and culture. And this new space, now obviously we got access to the money of the company. First with a part of the space, half of the space we have today, and then the more we were building credibility and landing proof points and successes in the market, the more space we were getting. So now we have a space that is much bigger than when we started. It reflects our culture today. First of all, because it's this big open space where all the different designers are there together, different kind of backgrounds, different kind of approaches, but working together. And then we have all these project rooms that at the beginning were dedicated to different famous designers. Every piece of furniture, so seating, tables, lighting, was designed by famous designer, from Karim Rashid to Patricio Orchiola, Naoto Fukazawa, Marcel Wanders. Then we ran out of designers. The challenge was to find a designer who would do chairs and tables and lighting. Not many designers do everything. So at the end, it was like, okay, we give up on this approach. But the importance of this room is, in these rooms, all the different teams, design and then R&D, marketing, all the different cross-functional teams get together to innovate, to create. And so they become like, a small laboratory where things come to life. And then we have actual laboratories, from a virtual reality room to a music studio, all the way to the 3D printing workshop, where we actually create digital and physical things that then become the products that go in the market. So the idea of collaboration and creativity is really what define that physical space and define our mindset.
Your team's, of course, grown. You have around 220 people on staff, 100 here in New York, 100 plus also working around the world in London and Moscow, Shanghai, Mexico City, Dallas. How do you manage all of that? And how do the workspaces that you've developed kind of accommodate for that?
Well, it's always a fine trade-off between connecting the different teams in an ongoing conversation and empowering them to be free and enabling to do what they think is right for the regions. And so on one side, if you just have this conversation, we'll have people both in the regions and at the center in conference calls all day, all the time, and not able to really do their work. If they just do their work and they are totally empowered, you may have a totally decentralized organization and it's not going to work out.
At 3M, you started this sort of time rule that you call the 15% time rule. You've continued that at Pepsi. Tell me a little bit about what that is and how that works. It obviously connects directly to this having fun conversation.
Yeah. Look, I wish I could take credit for that. But in reality, that rule, the 15% rule, was invented by McKnight, the great CEO of 3M in the 40s. And is the guy that actually made 3M what it is today. He's been CEO, I think, for like 40 years. And before that, he was at the beginning of the company, was there. And so he came up with this idea that anybody in the company could spend 15% of their time in what today we may call a pet project, in a passion, project. What that really means is that, let's say that you are in PepsiCo today and you work in Pepsi. You are the brand designer working in Pepsi. But you are in the company and you understand that maybe there is an opportunity for the brand Lay's, or maybe there is an opportunity for a product that nobody envisioned yet, that doesn't exist in the market. So you have the possibility to work on that project for 15% of your time. What that means is that you cannot tell him, tell her, why are you working on this? You have all these priorities. Don't waste your time in this. You could never do that. Today, we talk about the 20% rule of Google. Google, I think, came up with a rule in 2002. When I came to PepsiCo, I introduced that kind of rule for my own team. And then there is people that take the rule and embrace it, and people that don't care because they have so much on their plate are like, I prefer to just do that. And it's very interesting to see who are the person that do it.
The dreamers.
Yes. Yeah. The innovators, the entrepreneurs.
You've mentioned before that if you want to change the culture of a business, you have to start at the headquarters. And you also have, in all the research I did, I noticed you used the phrase leveraging design a lot. So I'm curious, how do you view this notion of leveraging design, and how in turn does that connect to this notion of changing culture?
Well, if you look at my job, for instance, to do good design projects, to drive good design projects is just a component of it. But the vast majority of what I have to do, and by the way, thank God, what I like to do as well, is changing culture. And this is particularly true when you're trying to introduce something different than what usually the company used to do. I, in the past 20 years, trying to do this in different kind of companies, I realized that there are specific phases, the culture transformation goes through. And they're always the same. The first one is the denial. So the company is like, well, I don't really need design, or I don't really need, music content creation inside the company. Whatever it is, it could be a new finance capability. Denial. I don't need it. And this is true for so many companies. It's difficult to admit that you need to do something radically different. The second phase is what I call the hidden rejection. It's the phase when you think you're getting traction, but in reality, they are rejecting you and you don't realize. And it's the most dangerous one, because by the time you realize, it may be too late for you. For your new culture. You may have lost 6 months, 1 year, and then you need to start again from scratch. Then you go to the third phase that I call the occasional leap of faith. Essentially, these individuals, I gave a name also to these individuals. They are the co-conspirators. So you find these people that are willing to bet on the new capability, to bet on you, on design.
I mean, you had the full buy-in of Indra when you came to Pepsi.
The proof points are the most important thing. You can talk about design forever and be very eloquent and convince everybody. But until you land successes in the market, they will never really completely believe you. But once you start to land these proof points, and they don't need to be perfect, they need to be good enough to show that there is value in the new approach, then other people want to be part of it. It become almost, it's like fire, it's exponential. So, and that's when you start to move to the fourth phase. That is what I call the quest for confidence. Essentially, is when the company finally realizes that in this new approach, there is value. And they're like, you know what? We want to have much more of this. So we start to hire more designers and give them more money and resources. And at that point, now you need to face the day-to-day. You need to integrate this new capability that is not anymore one person here and there. No, we start to have an investment, a real investment, a lot of people. And you need to integrate them into the processes of the company, the culture of the company. And this is where usually, the company does the investment, but then things get really tricky and difficult day to day, and you lose confidence. So you need designers there day by day, together with the marketers, the R&D organization, with all the different functions, to keep the confidence high, that what you're doing, the different way of working, is worth and is going to pay off. The ambassadors of the new culture, the owners of the new capability need to be in-house, because the design, the new capability is about penetrating the DNA of the company. And then finally, just to close, the fifth phase is what I call the holistic awareness, when people finally get it, design get integrated inside the organization, and you can work all together cross-functionally to drive it to excellence and success in the market.
Yeah, the big picture view. So where would you say you fall now at Pepsi? Are you in stage?
I think that I will be constantly, always in quest for confidence phase, because as soon as I arrive to, I achieve something, I immediately need to challenge the system and try to do something bigger and broader. You're always trying to do more and better and better and better. You can't stop. I will be in quest for confidence forever.
In a way, that's like the future of work. You're always in that mode.
Yeah, there is always something better to do and some place to innovate. And there is a poet in Italy from the 1800s. His name is Leopardi, and he used to talk about, there was a poem, a specific poem called Il Sabato del Villaggio, the Saturday of the village. And this poem was celebrating the amazing feeling that you have the day before the Sunday. The Sunday was the day of the party, the celebration, the holiday. The Saturday was the day of the preparation for the celebration. And you have always that tension, and you prepare, you have that excitement. And then when you achieve your goal, you're like, okay, there is almost less excitement when you achieve the goal than when you are preparing, in the journey. The journey is beautiful. So I'm a journey kind of guy. I need to be constantly in that kind of journey.
Yeah. It's like always Monday for you.
Yeah.
Start of the week.
Yes.
Mauro, this is great. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. For more on the podcast, head to theworkspaceoftomorrow.com. You can follow Room on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Made by Room. And be sure to visit room.com to learn more about how the New York City startup is reimagining the modern workspace. We'll be back with our next episode soon. Stay tuned.